Welcome back to the Eve approach, and before we get on with anything like launching craft and stuff today, we're actually going to finish the tech tree. That's right, we've got enough science from basically all of our journeys around Eve and Gilly, plus I'm going to be honest with you, we well and truly overdid the science around Kerbin. We've actually, if I'd have not gone to Eve and just waited a couple of months, I could have actually just done it from the stations around Kerbin and Namun and Minmus, because we had a lot of science just basically waiting to go through the labs there. So there you go. Science is finished, 270 science extra, and that will probably go up as the series goes. We're also going to hire a couple of new crew, because you can see we've got a lot of crew there. I've already hired a couple at the bottom there, but we're going to add some more as well, because I think we're going to need some crew to go to Eve. But anyway, one of the other things we're going to do is we're going to return some crew. Now, I'm keeping crew on Minmus and Mun Station just because, well, I don't have craft there to easily get them back, first of all, and secondly, they're still doing some science, so I'm not in a big hurry to do anything with that. But one of the reasons that I want to bring back this crew is because one of them is a veteran. Yes, you can see there, is it the Bill or the Bob? I can't remember which one it is, Bill or Bob. And I want them to go to Eve. I want Bill and Bob to go to Eve, and I want Val to go to Eve. So we're gonna bring them back. And it was just a nice little way of doing a little something around Kerbin, because you never see much around Kerbin at the moment, because we're not really doing much there. So there we go, a bit of Kerbin into the water, splash splash, wham wham, off we go. So it is the start of our second wave. This is going to be our second set of launches and missions to Eve. So we're going to use all that new tech we've got. We've got everything opened up. And so what do I do to celebrate? I take our station that we've had around the Mun and so forth, and I basically retrofit it to send it to Eve. So we have a mission that requires us to put a station around Gilly. I think it's Gilly. And we've also got one to put a station on the surface of Eve, but we'll get to that in the future. So we've got a mission to put a station around Gilly, and I thought, well, if we're putting one around Gilly, we should really put one around Eve. So there we go. Capacity for, I think it's 7 people or something like that. We're not going to send 7. It actually might be 8. It might be 9. I think it's 9 actually. Yeah. 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, it's about 9. So we're going to send 9 storage for 9 people. We're not going to send 9 people in the craft, though, obviously, because that would be just silly. Batteries, because in the last episode we realized the batteries are quite important. So there we go. Gilly Lab is also going to be the same as Eve Lab. They're basically going to be the same construction. And what I'm actually doing here is just checking that those little thrusters that we're attaching are actually usable around Gilly, because I'm aware that we need a little bit of extra delta V for things around Gilly. So there we go. And then we're going to attach our standard launch stage that you saw in the first wave. It's the one we use. Now, we do have new engines and things like that, but I don't really need to use them at the moment. And then we're going to just strut it up and make sure that it's all nice and pretty, because obviously if it is not nice and pretty, it is a problem. So there we go. Get that together, all well and sorted. Everything looks good. Make sure it's all pulled up, and you can see there it's pretty much the same launch vehicle we've used all along. And I start to have a look at engines at this point, because we do have new engines, and I thought maybe we should try some new engines. But for the size of what we've got, although I think, is it the Wolfhound there that I tried? The Wolfhound is more efficient. Ironically, because of its mass, it doesn't actually give us much. So I decided just to go with what we've got. We know it works. We know it gets us to Eve. We know it's got a capacity of a certain tonnage. But what I actually did instead was we stick some solids on the side. That's it. Give me some thrust from the launch, just to get me going nice and quickly. Probably not the sort of most sensible idea. I did think about using the ESA sort of covers on it. Decided against it. Nose cones, because that's always helpful. And just because I have been having trouble recently with solids coming back and blowing up my craft, we stick some little Sepatron type things on the top there, and that should hopefully help us. And we put some struts on, because all that power going through them, just one sort of decoupler there is just not thingy. I did think about liquid boosters and asparagus staging. I decided against it, because I just wanted to strap some solids on, basically. You know, if in doubt, more boosters, I think is the Kerbal motto, and we are playing stock. So there we go. We have crews on board. This is going to be the Eve. I think this is the Eve mission we're going first. And you can see there it wobbles like a wobbly thing. We did have some struttage going on with it, but yeah, the wobbling was a problem. Let's be entirely honest. It was horrendous. It was a horrendous wobble. I think partly because that first stage has multiple small tanks, and that just makes it a little bit not as stable. and partly just because of a lack of struts and the fact that we're using fairings potentially instead of decouplers because of the engines we're using. Yeah, we could improve that. So you see there's particularly around the fairing points, there was sort of Z-fighting and stuff like that, which makes me think that's the weak point. So there we go. Get that into orbit, unfurl our little things, and also think about, do we want wobbly rockets? We unfurl our big transmission dishes, which are the same as I think that what we've got in Minmus orbit. We've got some on the Minmus station, and then we're ready to go. We've got those 4-nozzled, 2-engined LV, was it 303 or 305? At some point I will learn the names of these. The Poodle, it's the Poodle engine, I believe, isn't it? I think it's the Poodle engine. Can comment down below if it's not the Poodle engine. I always think it's the Poodle engine, but it probably isn't. So we've got 2 Poodle engines, that's 4 Poodle nozzles, which I think is that like the RD181, RD171, RD191 sort of thing that the Russians do, where they have different numbers of nozzles and turbo pumps and stuff on the same basic concept. Anyway, it's going to head off, and it's now onto its sort of final stage. This final stage will take it pretty much all the way to Eve and so forth, and in the case of this one, to Eve orbit. So we then launch again. Now this one, I actually went and modified a little bit. So what we've actually done is put some struts in those interstage sections. You see we're getting less wobble from this craft. So note to self, hiding struts is probably a good idea. So I don't think it's so much the first stage and its multiple tanks at this point. I think it's actually those fairings in the 2 sort of interstages. So we've got some struts in there just to make it a bit better. And you'll see, interestingly, for a craft that is the same mass with the same sort of launch profile, we actually have a better launch. And there you go, you can see some struts now in that interstage, just holding that together. Now, one thing I didn't think about so much about this was, do the struts get in the way of some of the equipment inside? Now, that does not become an issue with this launch, or in fact with this series of craft, but in an upcoming episode, I make a boo-boo because of my position of struts, and it involves, you'll see anyway, you will see it in an upcoming episode. It gets quite interesting. So we put our antenna out, we check everything, and then this one's going to go as well. It's going to fire itself off to Eve and do exactly what the last one did. However, you'll see on board we have Bill/Bob. I actually think we've got Bill and Bob on this craft. You can see there's a little scroll bar there. I think I've got 4 or 5 crew on this. It's quite full. The previous one we only had 3 on. We had 2 scientists and a pilot, I believe. On this one we actually have, I think we have 5 or 6 crew. So we can do science on it, and we've also got extra crew as well. So you will see why in the episode 8, in fact, for this one, because episode 8 is the last of this launch. And there was a reason I was transporting crew on this, primarily because I didn't think it was fair to put crew on smaller craft. So because it's got capacity, I thought, it'd be a nice living habitat. We could actually have sent sort of the Eve and Gilly stations together. In reality, we could have attached them to each other, sent them in one ship form, as it were, and then detach them and separate them out when they were around Eve. And I think that would have possibly been nicer from a community sort of feel. But yeah, I thought we'll just send 2 that are basically the same. And the reason I'm not doing this over 2 episodes is because they are basically the same. So here we are. I'm now preparing. I'm now looking at. We're still in Kerbal Sphere of Influence, and I'm actually looking at our route to Eve, to Gilly, and I'm trying to calculate out some things. You can see, I'm looking at trying to get a maneuver node that puts us in the same plane as Gilly, and that's important to me. So I actually, instead of doing when I get to the next Sphere of Influence change, I actually put a marker for the next maneuver, and then we move towards that maneuver. So here we are. What we're going to do is we're going to do a burn around Eve that's actually going to, or before we get to Eve, that's going to sort of capture, and it's going to start capturing, but it's also going to put it on the plane. There you go. So we're now on the same sort of roughly the same plane as Gilly, and to me that was important. It took a little bit of fuel, but we have got a lot of fuel on this transport. And you can see we've kept the orbit really high there because we don't need to do anything else with it. It's not a big issue. And then the Eve version comes in. So this is the Eve station comes in. It's going to grab some science while it's there because you might as well start doing science. We don't really need to do science. We've got all the science, but it feels bad going somewhere and not doing things like science. the fact that it is possible to actually complete the tech tree without leaving Kerbin's sphere of influence, I think is it means that it returns you to sort of sandbox Kerbal in many ways. So I'm just going to collect the science as though we needed it, and there we go. And then we're going to do some more bits and bobs. So there we are, doing things, doing the sciences, getting all the sciences, and yeah. But it's just about getting all this stuff sort of done, getting it rocking all the way through it. Interestingly, I moved our crew around a bit when I was doing this, because you will notice it just looks different bottom right hand corner. I did move some of the crew around a little bit just to get things sorted and so forth. But yeah. There we are. So that we just do a lot of science around Eve. Pretty much high science is what we're looking for, because this station is going to go into a low Eve orbit in the end there. And one thing I try and do is I want to put it equatorially, primarily because in an ideal world, when we have finished with this station will be when we have actually gone to Eve's surface and come back. And the easiest way to do that is equatorially. Yeah, to do rendezvous from equatorial, particularly if we've got a craft coming back up with a lack of delta V. Yeah, that's probably what's going to happen. It may even be that this station does the rendezvous, because it does have those little thrusters and things like that. Although I don't believe it's got RCS, so that sort of scuppers that plan. So there you go. We're going to bring this in. We're now pretty much on an equatorial orbit, and then it's just about bringing it down, and we're going to bring it down reasonably low. Actually, it's not going to be really tight. We're looking at 400 kilometers roughly, which is actually pretty much where our low level communication system is at, which is quite nice. It does mean that this can sort of augment that. It can act as communication to the surface of Eve, and then out to Gilly and back to Kerbin. And it's got those two big transmission dishes on, so you could say that our communication system is excess, that we didn't need it, but I just like having good communications, because there is nothing worse than coming into that one moment in the mission where it's really key, and then all of a sudden you don't have any communications and everything goes wrong. And then we have the sun popping around the back of Eve just as our engine stops, so it looks as though the engine's exploded. Right, and then we're just going to keep bringing the craft down a little bit to a nice sensible orbit. I think we set on 200, which is above the Eve atmosphere, because I think Eve atmosphere is about 110 or something like that. Gives us a nice bit of leeway, and then we send one of our Kerbals out there just to get these struts, because one of the things that I notice is that we can actually just attach the struts to the side of the station, so we can take them. They were originally from the fairing base, so if we'd have decoupled, they would have been lost. So we've brought them with us. We might as well keep them. We haven't got any storage, but we can just stick them wherever we want. And then the next thing is I attach a probe core to that body, so that when I detach it, I can actually get rid of it in a nice sensible way. So we're going to put the station up onto the normal. I think we just do the moving around, get everybody positioned. There we go, onto the normal. We can put the solar panels out, and then because I put that probe core onto the other craft, I can now actually maneuver that craft. We still have control of it. Yeah, interesting use of storage. So I swapped some struts for a probe core, which is probably not very economical, but that's what we did. Anyway, back to the Gilly station. So it's on a reasonably inclined orbit, and what we're actually going to do is we're just going to match inclination. And it wasn't as good a sort of first burn as I thought, but we do with a little bit of burn, a little bit of a burn. I think it's only about 160 meters per second. It's actually not very bad for a plane change. In reality, we're going to do that plane change reasonably way, spinning around all over the place. There we go. Found Eve. I wanted Eve in the background because I like you to know that I'm actually doing this around Eve, so that you know I'm not cheating or anything like that. This whole section is actually one uncut section, so yeah, if anything goes wrong, you know it's live. Shall we say? That's another question. Would you like live streams? I've never really considered live streaming, but stuff like this I think would be quite fun. So there we go. We're going to come in and we're going to do a little maneuver there. We're going to get a really quick, there we go, really quick approach to Gilly, and we need to, isn't that a lovely shot there? Eve and Gilly. Gilly looks massive there compared to Eve. How ironic. So we're going to just capture now, and it's pretty much, you've seen all this stuff before. Gilly, this capture at Gilly actually took quite a bit of delta V. I think it was around 500 meters per second, which was more than I was expecting. And I think partly that was because we were coming down from a very elliptical orbit. so we're actually carrying a lot of velocity with us as we were coming down. So we had to cancel all that, and there we go. We're gonna put this craft onto an equatorial orbit as well, primarily just because, well, it's Gilly. I could leave it in any orbit because you can see it takes 20 meters per second. But I just find equatorially, it just keeps everything aligned. I then know in many ways, I know if something is actually going to be a craft or not that I want, or whether it's a bit of rubbish. So there we go. We do the burn, and again, we have the delta V on this station to actually not have bothered to use that orange tank. But I thought we'll use the orange tank. We might as well. We could dispose of the orange tank and things like that, but it's a fuel source, and what I would really like is to actually have more stuff available regarding fuel. I was tempting at this point to keep the orange tank permanently, and of course we started doing our science. We get our Gilly science and get that going on. I was tempted to keep the orange tank permanently, but that does stop the docking nodes from being useful. In reality, I should have put a docking node on the top of this craft, on the top of this station, in fact, because it would have been better. And again, we're going to move all of our little struts away onto the main body of the craft, just in case I need them, because there's nothing worse than not having a strut when you need it. And then what we're going to do, oh look, yeah, I'm not sure I want to use a panel on this one. There we go. And now I do have a probe core there, so I have not realized that there is a probe core in my inventory there, because I was tempted to decouple the orange tank and just fire into Gilly as an impactor. I actually missed a trick, because if we go to Gilly and we put down, you can see there's a lot of crew on that craft, by the way, a lot of crew. We've got, I think, yeah, we've got 5 crew on board. If I went to Gilly and put a seismometer on the surface and then I impacted it with something, I think I actually get extra science. So yeah, there we are. We have space stations, or space harbours if you're watching my British playthrough. Space harbours around Eve, we've got space harbour around Gilly. We've got a lot of crew all of a sudden. We've got, I think that takes us to 9 crew, no, 8 crew in total. 3 round Eve and 5 round Gilly. So we've got quite a few crew there. We will have to bring them back at some point, and I don't have a craft for that at the moment, so I must write that down, that we've got to bring the crew back. So that's a definitely one mission for the future. This next 3 launches is going to be about exploring Eve. We're gonna. Well, I won't spoil too much about it. We're gonna land some stuff on Gilly. We're gonna land some stuff on Eve, but it's not going to be your standard just probes that we've landed before. We're gonna build an air force or some sort of thing. And then we're going to do a little bit of a crew movement and stuff because, yeah, and I've also got a probe around Gilly that needs fixed, so I need to do that. So the next 3 episodes got quite a few bits and bobs going on in them. But anyway, from me, until next time, like and comment and say all the things you want, subscribe, do these things, give me your feedback, tell me what you want to see, tell me what you don't like. Until next time, have a great one.